Yes, that's right. The Survivor Know-It-Alls are live here after episode 8 of Survivor Cambodia, and we are just going to be driving our Toto around like madmen tonight, Josh Wigler.
Oh my God, we're going tip-top Totos.
Tip-top Totos. Oh my God.
I'm going to have to try and keep my 3 C's throughout this thing because that was some baller Survivor tonight.
Wow, what an episode. Somewhere
episode.
Eliza Orleans is dousing champagne all over herself.
Yes.
Maybe Stephen Fischbach is nearby to raise a glass to toast Andrew Savage blindside tonight.
Wow, idled out of the game. Andrew Savage blasted. Hey, remember Survivor Worlds Apart when Jen Brown plays her idol and Joe looks at her and says, "Savage."
Wow.
How about that? Did he predict this? This is the echo of that comment?
Yeah, oh my God. I was just going to correct myself because I know I made a big deal in the Evolution of Strategy Chapter 16 where I said that when Alexis got idled out of the game around the final 6 or so, and they called that a blindside on the show, I said, I don't know if that's really a blindside. That was an idle play. I don't know if a blindside is technically the right word, but what an idle play, and I can't wait to talk about all this here tonight on Survivor Know-It-All. So, fun show, of course. We're live here on robinswebsite.com, and so much to talk about as we take your questions later on tonight with the hashtag RHAP, and of course on our YouTube channel at robinswebsite.com/YouTube. All right, let's just take care of some business up front.
Let's do it.
A couple of announcements here concerning the next couple days on RHAP. As many of you guys know, that my wife, the lovely first lady of podcasting, Nicole Cesternino, is very pregnant.
She was on Savage's season, right?
No, don't confuse people. And so that she is extremely pregnant, and so we are on high alert over here, and it is working out as of right now, as of this hour, that it's looking like tomorrow is going to be the day that her and her doctor have figured it out, and so we are going to be headed into the place where they bring babies into this world, and then we are going to begin that process sometime tomorrow morning. So very exciting stuff, and again, that is somewhat tenuous because they can always push you back or tell you or cancel you, but that is what Nicole and the doctor have worked out. So, Josh, what that means is that I will be unavailable for most of tomorrow and probably the subsequent days following that.
Yes.
And so Josh is going to be stepping in my place tomorrow morning to host the RHAP exit interview.
It's just another step in my master plan to take over the entire podcast empire. First Fischbach, and now I'm taking you out.
Then you. Plus, in addition, you can also read Josh's exit interview on Parade.com as well. So Josh will be doing not one but 2 exit interviews with Andrew Savage. How about that?
Yeah, double header with Andrew Savage. I'm excited. It'll be fun.
And then our recap podcast is also going to be hosted by Josh because he is going to be speaking with our good buddy Marty Piombo.
Yes, it will be Wigler versus Mr. Farty tomorrow, and I'm very excited about this.
All right, and then no voicemail guest this week, so Josh is going to be bringing you an interview with Marty Piombo, and that's going to be coming up on Thursday, and I will probably also be out of the loop for the Amazing Race as well, and then I'm hoping to be, barring any sort of complications or anything like that, back in the office here on Monday of next week. So that's what's going on at this hour. And again, if there's any sort of updates or anything, we'll figure it all out, and I'll let you guys know on social media what the latest is. But that's where we stand right now. So a little bit of a different schedule coming up on Thursday. All right, Josh.
Well, it's a good thing that they didn't throw a crazy complicated Survivor episode at you tonight during this crazy complicated time in your life. Preemptive Mazel Tov, good luck, everything like that, Rob. We'll all hold it down for you while you're gone.
My bag is packed. I was ready to go, but the terrifying thought here was that I was going to potentially miss out on a Stephen Fischbach exit interview tomorrow morning, and that would have been a very, very sad fact. But Stephen Fischbach, even though the edit really selling a Fischbach boot, he ends up surviving really through no fault of his own.
Yeah, no, it was a really skin of his teeth type of thing, and it really was looking like this was an episode that was setting up the fall of Fish. And it was very, very intense. It was nerve-wracking. I'm sure that everyone in RHAP, everybody in this community was on the edge of their seat, waiting to see what was going to happen here. It really looked like it was going to be Steven's night to go tonight. I was shocked that it didn't work out that way. I thought that that's where we were going. Did you think, even up to the end, did you think that this was going to be Steven's time?
Well, I was starting to pick up on that Kelly was going to play her idol. So I did feel like that's where this was going, and it was really just going to come down to the question of who did the women on the bottom, who did they want to put their vote for? And I thought they correctly picked Andrew Savage as the person, as opposed to Steven, who was somebody that we saw earlier in this episode working with Sierra as somebody who could potentially be an ally for them down the road. So I thought they actually made the right call to take out Andrew instead of Stephen Fischbach.
I agree. I think that Sierra she's had history with Steven. She's been on tribes with Steven. She doesn't have this rivalry with him, it seems like, the way that she did with Savage, where she really got under Savage's skin last week. She's been rolling her eyes at every single thing that he said for the past several episodes now. Savage did have that moment where he threw Sierra's name out there as a decoy. Sierra was not happy about that. So Sierra does not have good history with Savage, whereas, yes, Steven doesn't seem to be, at this point, willing to walk away from the Jeremy thing, the Tasha thing. He has interest in getting rid of Joe. Joe is protected tonight, but he's at least entertaining those conversations with Sierra. And I think from Sierra's perspective, if she can clip Savage out of the equation, that might free someone like Steven's wings, or even a Jeremy. I mean, it really kind of changes the game in a really big way to lose the guy who is probably the big Bayon brother. You know, he was the guy who was really pushing this thing. And so what does the landscape look like now that Savage is gone? This guy who really had this old school mentality, wanted to keep this alliance together and just do a basic thing. What does it look like now that he's gone? I think it frees up the game in a really interesting way. So I agree. I think Sierra made the right call going after Savage instead of Steven, not just because of personal bias.
There's one tribal council in Survivor history that this really is reminding me of, and I'd love to sort of bounce it off you and see what you think. So when we studied all of the seasons of Survivor, we spent a lot of time talking about this tribal council, which was at the final 9 in Survivor Caramoan, when Philip Shepard went out of the game, and he was really the person who was holding that big Stealth R Us alliance together, and he was the person that those people at the bottom really targeted. And we talked about how when we studied that tribal council, it was almost like for the Cochrans, for the Brendas, for the Andreas of the world, when Malcolm and Eddie and Reynolds said, hey, we're voting for Philip tonight, we're taking Philip out. In some ways it was like, okay, we're kind of cool with that. That's you're doing us a big favor because you're taking out this guy for us who was really sort of blocking a lot of what we were trying to do strategically. Do you feel like for the Jeremys, for the Stevens, for the Tashas, maybe not so much for the Joes of the world, do you think that in some ways did they do them a favor by taking out Andrew, who was the de facto figurehead of the old Bayon Alliance?
Yeah, I think that at some point, you know, whether it was going to happen, it felt like it was imminent for a guy like Jeremy. Jeremy is tight with Steven. They've had, as he says on the show, we've had 20 days of trust that we've built up, but he's tight with Savage as well, and Savage does not trust Fischbach, deeply does not trust Fischbach from the beginning of the game. Fish does not seem to have a lot of love lost between himself and Savage as well, and at some point, Jeremy's going to have to choose. And either side that he's going to choose, he's potentially, losing jury votes. He's, showing himself to be, he's picking a side there. It's a tough situation. Either way, he is really damaging something. He has two really firm pillars there that are going to be difficult. One of them is going to come crashing down, and he's going to get hit with some of that damage. So yeah, absolutely, for a guy like Jeremy, in either direction, whether it was getting rid of Savage or Steven, that's one person that he was probably going to have to take out at some point down the line anyway, that he doesn't have to worry about on his own. So I think definitely from his perspective, I see exactly what you're saying. I think that this is really great because, a guy like Cochran was going to have to figure out the Philip thing, or Andrea.
Just like Cochran was able to get the jury vote of Philip in the end, for Jeremy, this is like he gets to get rid of Andrew. He never has to screw him over. Plus, he gets to keep his ally ally in Steven that he was trying to protect in the game as a number anyway.
Right, exactly. So all of the Bion brothers, I mean, every single person in the game, it's still like it's no opinions that Savage had toward anyone have really changed. You know, the people that Savage still really liked, he still probably really likes as he's going to Ponderosa. The people he probably didn't like so much, he probably still really dislikes and would be wagging his middle finger at. So really, in terms of like the personal dynamics, nothing shifted. So it's interesting. That's definitely.
I'll tell you what. Now we're still processing stuff on the fly. That's going to be some good Ponderosa video coming up with Cass and Andrew Savage. I'm telling you that is going to be fantastic. We might have to just watch that later on tonight and just come back on the air to talk about that.
Yeah.
Get ready for super indignant Andrew Savage jury speech coming up here in the finale. This is going to be really good stuff.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. I mean, if it's a final three of like Keith, Joe, Jeremy, he's going to be thrilled. You know, he'll be thrilled to death. So I don't think that he would be spiteful. It depends on who's sitting there. But I could absolutely see it. We saw kind of cranky pants Andrew over the past several episodes, so I could definitely see that extending. And we know that there's no love lost between Savage and Cass. I don't know about in your exit interview. I believe that she was pretty forthright in how she feels about Savage with you. With me, she was very forthright. I believe that the words she used to describe Andrew were cantankerous toddler. Is how she described Andrew Savage. And Cass also has been really vocal about the fact that being at Ponderosa and being the quote-unquote queen of Ponderosa is a top 2 experience for her in her entire history on Survivor, which means having Andrew come into the mix, who's someone that she has a personality clash with, it's got to be an explosive Ponderosa video that's about to happen here. I can't wait. That's absurd. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that should be a lot of fun. What do you think about Andrew's exit from the game? You know, Abi-Maria says to him a little bit taunting, like, well, at least you made the jury.
Right.
And then Andrew Savage gives her the middle finger. Now, we've called out other survivors in the past for giving the middle finger. Cass specifically in Survivor Cagayan.
Tonight as well.
Yeah. What did you think about Andrew Savage? Because, I mean, that he really does carry himself in the game as somebody who's, like, somewhat above reproach, somebody with a lot of integrity, somebody who's sort of, like, above the sort of childish pettiness of the game. But I thought that was not a great look for him going out the door.
It seemed like, and you're right, I think that that's a spot-on assessment of how Andrew seems to carry himself in the game, that he seems to be a guy that has some sort of nobility and honor to him, or at least that's what he wants to present. But we've seen it in these past few episodes where something has just been chipping away at him, and whether it was when he went after Spencer and it didn't work, and he now realized that he was surrounded by liars, expert liars, and he has this confessional where he curses them off. You start to see the facade wear down there. You see it again tonight with Savage giving the middle finger not just to Abby on his way out the door, but to the balls that he drops in the immunity challenge. So I think that somewhere along the way, just like, kind of cranky pants Savage came out. Chalk it up to having a really tough situation on Anchor, maybe, constantly moving around in the game, constantly having twists and turns and being on new tribes every other second. Maybe it's got something to do with that. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely not the most flattering look. I mean, it's a great Survivor moment. I'm glad it happened. Andrew Savage flipping the bird on his way out the door is classic. But it's not what you'd expect from the guy. And certainly not from the guy who walked away in Pearl Islands, I wouldn't think.
Yeah. And so now we end up with Andrew being the second member of the jury. Could we just sort of like go ahead and go back and autopsy this a little bit? So we had everything going on with Steven talking to everybody seemingly about how he is going to want to target Joe if Joe doesn't win immunity. Andrew overhears that, and we see Andrew have this conversation with Joe, and then Joe then goes ahead and has this conversation with these women on the bottom. If Andrew doesn't have that conversation with Joe, do you think he still is the person that ends up being targeted by those women?
If he lets Joe go, is that what you're putting forth?
Yes. If he ultimately, what if he went with obviously that Steven can't get voted out there. I mean, he has really two options here. Should he have not said anything to Joe, or should he have pushed harder to get Steven out?
I think maybe he should have pushed harder to get Steven out. There was obviously a lot of mistrust between Savage and Steven. He did not trust Steven at all. He was convinced to keep Steven around for another round. Joe wasn't happy about it either. If Savage and Joe were really really not into Steven, Joe has every reason in the world to not be into Steven right now, then they should have pushed harder about that. I think that that's a testament to the control that Jeremy has in this dynamic. If Jeremy is the guy who can put the foot down and say, no, we can't get rid of Steven yet, or even Tasha as well, who seems to be on board with that. These two who obviously have major issues with Steven, maybe if they had gone after him tonight, Savage would still be around. I mean, you don't see anyone playing an idol on Steven. Steven obviously doesn't have an idol. But, I mean, it's also, we talked last week about the split vote, and that was such a scary time to do the split vote. What do you think? Was tonight the time to do a split vote?
I mean,
just dumping him on Wentworth.
If you did the split vote, well, when there was 13 and you had 9, I mean, it seems ludicrous to me that you wouldn't do the split vote this time because there were 9 votes that got canceled out for Wentworth. That might be a Survivor record. We might have to go to the Survivor wiki when Andrew Savage is on there. We can ask him.
Jeff Pittman on the line.
Yeah, to look that up. But 9 votes got canceled out, especially when there's only 3 people who are in the minority. How do you not do a 5-4 split and then have their votes only be 3? Even if one of them switches, then you're still covered. I mean, it blows my mind that they wouldn't do a vote split here.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and believe me, that will be a top question on the board when I talk to Andrew Savage tomorrow, both times. But I think that you know, I don't know, like, was Wentworth tipped off? Who tips off Wentworth? Why are they so confident that Wentworth is unprotected? Is that a testament to Wentworth was just such a good liar about this idol?
I got the sense, I feel like Joe tipped her off.
It feels like it, but if Joe tipped her off, if Joe knew that the idol was in play, or was it a courtesy tip off? Was it a tip off of let's get rid of Steven, let's use your idol to get rid of Steven, and she goes rogue and gets rid of Savage? So there's a lot of possibilities there. There's an untold story there about how Wentworth was able to pull this play off. I think that a lot of it is just going to end up being that Wentworth was a gangster, and that was a gangster move, and not to take anything away from that. But there's a story there. There's definitely a story there, and I wish that we'd seen it.
And I feel like that story goes back to Joe. Again, I don't know anything, but I feel like Joe had to have told somebody, either whether it was just like a courtesy thing to Kelly, or if it was a courtesy thing to Sierra, and Sierra told Kelly, and Kelly kept the idol thing. Good on her and she didn't tell anybody about the idol, and she's made it sound like Terry had the idol, and so that they didn't even think that that Takeo idol was in play probably. And then nobody thought there was an Angkor idol. So very, very good job on Kelly of keeping the idol a secret all season long. But I feel like at some point this all has to go back to Joe.
Yeah, so let's talk about Wentworth a little bit more. Let's dig into her. She's had this idol since the first episode. I witnessed her grab it. It was the coolest thing that I've ever seen. It was such a great moment. She has had this secret for this entire time. She now plays the idol tonight. She has to play the idol, otherwise she's toast. So good on you, Wentworth. But one of Wentworth's advantages, I think, at least going into the game, and probably for a decent portion of the game, is no one really knows the playbook on Kelly Wentworth. She is invisible in San Juan del Sur. The fact that she's on this season is somewhat miraculous. Is the secret out on Kelly Wentworth? What does it look like? What's the forecast for Wentworth now that this move is made, now that she's idled a huge alpha player out of the season? How are people going to look at Wentworth? Are they going to look at her differently? What do you think the next moves are with her?
I mean, to me, and I mentioned that tribal council with Phillip where we ended up having that, okay, well, now Phillip's out of the game. What's going to happen? Are people going to work with Malcolm and Reynolds and Eddie? Now, the difference between that and these three amigas, Kelly and Sierra and Abi-Maria, everybody was afraid of them winning challenges, the amigos. With the amigas, maybe people leave them alone, and maybe without Andrew, maybe it's now open season on what could go on internally at Bion. For instance, if Joe doesn't win the immunity next week, could that be the week that we see Joe go home now that Andrew isn't there to protect him? So I think that they do have more room to maneuver than Malcolm and Reynolds and Eddie ultimately did. But to me, I feel like that they're still going to be the biggest target out there. I would imagine. It's interesting, but it was such a smart move for them to get rid of Andrew, because Andrew was the guy from the old school thinking of, hey, let's just pick off the people from the other tribe. That's what he said at the beginning of the episode. Right. And then ultimately when he heard Steven talk about Joe, he said, okay, Joe is the snake in the grass. But now I wonder if you have people like Steven who said in the episode, hey, I don't want to just pick off the Kellys and Abbies and Sierras. That's boring.
Right. Well, now a very big move has been made. You know, it was not a conventional conventional boot by any stretch of the imagination. It should have been Wentworth or Sierra or Abby tonight if they were going down the line, the way that Savage was proposing, the way that everybody wanted it to go. Now, big game has gone down. We bagged the big animal here, and it's on. And I do feel like this is going to blow things up a little bit. Someone like Steven on the episode tonight talking about I wanna do the right move at the right time. People talking about that, it feels like it's wide open for that to happen. I feel like there's no going back, at least in the short term after something like that. How do you regroup from that? And I think that getting rid of Andrew, while maybe he's not he's not the most new school minded player by his own admission. He's more of an old school guy. I still think that his presence was such an important thing for the Bion brothers and Tasha that I think that getting rid of him is it's going to change the landscape in a really big way. So I think it was a good shot for Sierra and Wentworth and Abby for sure.
Now, I was really surprised that the target ended up being Kelly Wentworth instead of Sierra, because we all assumed coming into this episode that Sierra was probably going to be the person who was most likely to be targeted. Did you think that was, okay, we'll let Sierra think it's going to be her and put the votes on Kelly, so in case Sierra has an idol? Was that the reason, or do you think that there was a different reason why they targeted why they targeted Kelly, because she was original to KO?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's that. I mean, if it was, let's target Wentworth and not Sierra in case Sierra has an idol, then don't you do the split vote? Where's the split vote in that?
It blows my mind how there would not be a split vote here in this episode. I mean, it's so crazy. Boy, how has Spencer managed to? Not only is he not even coming up, he's like part of the alliance of Bion.
They like him. Savage and Spencer must have mended their fences after Savage had targeted him. Savage says, you can trust me from now on. I won't do that again. Maybe that's good enough for Spencer. Spencer has, a bond with Jeremy from Bion 2.0. He's got a thing with Tasha. So if you look at the group of people here, these are people that Spencer can work with. I don't think that he's not mentioned as one of the five, the four verging on five people that are in control of the game. He's not a guy that's getting called out there, so I don't think that he is viewed that way within that group. But he's a loyal number. He's a trusted number, somebody that you can tell the plan to, and he's sticking to it. So good for Spencer for finally finding some numbers. I just feel like those numbers are in disarray at this point after tonight.
Let's talk about Steven, and Steven got a lot of airtime in this episode. It definitely looked as though his number was going to be up. Now, after the reward challenge, we saw that Steven was talking about how he was very upset about how he didn't get a chance to go on the reward challenge, and he was bummed out about it. Certainly, he was.
He's a New Yorker. Sad. He wanted his bagels. What do you want?
Look. It sounded like a fun time, and so Steven talked about how he sort of lost Survivor token sheens because of a reward, because he didn't get to go on a reward, because there were bonds made in Survivor token sheens at a reward. And Josh, for the life of me, can you think of what he's talking about?
I mean, there was a reward with JT and Brendan, where Brendan fell in love with JT and sacrificed his game for JT basically.
But how did that make Steven lose the game? If anything, the reward that made Steven lose token sheens was like when he went with JT and they had the meet and they said, "Hey, let's be best friends forever."
Right.
And I feel like Steven's like, "I love this guy. I can't vote him out."
Yeah.
What was the reward that people bonded on? I am missing that point, and maybe somebody in the chat room knows, but I thought I was a little bit lost on what Steven was talking about there.
Yeah, I mean, there was a moment where Sierra was back at camp, and I don't think Tyson was still in the game at that point, but with Coach and Debbie, and it looked like maybe something could have happened there, and that was one of those times that Steven was gone, but obviously nothing happened there. It's not coming immediately to mind.
He lost in the final two to JT, unless there was some reward where JT made a bunch of friends with when Steven wasn't there, and then they all voted for JT because of that one day. That's the only thing. Unless Steven was just making up he's like, none of these people know my season that well. I'll just make the story up.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's been a lot of seasons since then. Hard to keep them all straight.
Okay. Is Steven pushing the Joe thing too hard in your mind, or is Steven correct in saying, hey, we need to get Joe out at this point in time?
Right. I think that with the people that he was in league with, maybe Tasha is down with it. Maybe Jeremy is starting to be down with it. Savage is unwaveringly loyal to Joe. Is Joe? I was thinking about this a little bit. Is there something to the idea of just like letting Joe be Joe and not be so concerned about him? And like the moment that he does lose immunity, it's probably on the table of, is this the time to get rid of Joe? And then the other obvious conclusion is that he's just going to be winning immunities, and you just let that happen and you start focusing your energy on other people. Maybe it's just not worth focusing too much energy on getting rid of Joe because it feels like an inevitability. You just can't let that guy keep going, and eventually his number is going to be up.
Yeah, that's how I would feel too, and that's the thing. When Steven was so upset a couple of weeks ago, I really wish if I could have sat there with him. I said, like, Joe's not gonna win every immunity. There'll be a time to get rid of Joe. Like, why are you bugging? Like,
Right.
don't worry, we'll vote Joe out. It's like, everybody sees that it's time to vote Joe out except for Andrew.
But I think an interesting aspect of it, and it's edited to look like Joe is responding to the threats. Like, oh, well, Steven's coming after me. Well, Steven's a really smart player. He knows I'm a threat, so that makes me nervous about Steven. Who knows what that other side of the coin really looks like? Who knows what Joe's fear of Steven is, and Savage's fear of Steven, and the fact that this is a guy who is a famous survivor thinker. This is a guy who is thinking about these things, and so maybe these are people who are just as worried about Steven in their own way as Steven is worried about them. He is a force to be reckoned with in his own right. Maybe not when it comes to chopping wood and doing puzzles and doing challenges, but in terms of thinking about the numbers and possibly orchestrating some kind of move. So, just as much as Steven is obviously being portrayed as razor-focused on Joe, I don't think that anyone other than Savage would seem to be kind of razor-focused on Steven, but it seems like Joe is worried about Steven as well.
What do you think about it when Andrew said that Steven prides himself on being known as the greatest strategist the game has ever seen?
Steven on Twitter said, I actually do not pride myself on that, but how do we know that Steven just didn't edit the wiki afterwards in like anticipation of this moment? We don't know.
Yeah.
Do we have screenshots of what it looked like before tonight?
Yeah, I don't know if Steve. I think that seems like a mischaracterization to me. I don't believe I've ever heard Steven.
He prides himself on being the knowingest know-it-all.
Yes, he prides himself on being, the greatest strategist on this show.
Is that on the wiki? Is that on the wiki? Did Savage read that? Oh, this guy is the knowingest know-it-all. I got to go after him.
Yeah. Well, I would just
the stupid bet you made with Steven Fischbach could have cost him the game. How about that?
Yeah. Well, at least if I ever play again, then I could say, well, I'm not. Steven prides himself on being the smartest person. Yeah. That's not me.
Yeah, that's right.
It's Steven's bad reputation. That's hurting me.
That's good.
Okay. Who else haven't we talked about tonight? Keith Nail. Was it a return to form for Survivor San Juan del Sur, Keith Nail, tonight?
This was a great, great Keith Nail episode. This is the reason why you vote Keith Nail onto the season. You don't vote him on to be some kind of strategic mastermind. You vote him on to see him be awesome with balls and have silly moments. And he was awesome with balls tonight. He had this great moment of driving the Toto around all over the beach with everybody. It was classic. It was classic Keith Nail, and this Nail Mail was very happy to see this side of Keith. Just as a fan, as somebody who's watching the show and trying to make sense of the story, what are we supposed to take away from it? Is it just like it's about time to show a Keith moment? This is a very funny Keith moment we've got in the bank. Let's roll it out. Let's not save this, because you could very easily see this being like a secret scene.
Nah, Josh, stop. I guess stop it right there. When Keith Nail is driving a Toto around and doing donuts on the beach, you put that in the show. You do not. That is not on CBS.com.
Yeah.
That is on CBSNo.com.
Yeah, well, I am happy about it. Obviously, I'm happy about it.
Montage material.
I'm wondering what to make of it, because Keith has been so quiet on the show. Pretty much up until now, there have been like really fun moments that you can look for. Keith's body language has been hilarious. When he did like the round thing at Tribal Council last week was very good. But there's just has not been a ton of Keith. So what are we to make of this? Can
it just be a funny moment? Can it just
be a funny moment?
Keith didn't really do anything funny yet, and then he I don't. Did they have booze in this reward?
Yeah, everyone's got the CC jitters. Everybody's just like buzzing on coffee.
Yeah, we know how the Nails get on these rewards. Sometimes they overdo it and they get overexcited. And Keith just had a great Keith Nail moment. I think that's all it comes down to. I don't think there's necessarily a message or a meaning behind it.
It was just Toto overload.
Yeah, Toto's overload.
Yeah.
All right. Abi-Maria is really has turned into real purple Abi-Maria of late. It's like a tale of two seasons for her.
Yeah, she has been very quiet ever since the merge. She does have this moment that does feel a little bit like a Varner callback. Varner saying in the early days of Angkor how all he wants is to make the jury, and he gets blasted out by Abby who had turned over to Savage, and as Savage is leaving, Abby, who has now betrayed Savage, says at least he made the jury. So I feel like there's a little bit of connective thread there. But yeah, there hasn't been too much of Abby. She's been quiet. It was a very top heavy Abby season. The front half of this season was very Abby heavy. So if it's a little reduced right now, I think not a ton of people are complaining.
Okay, Josh. At Tribal Council, there was more of this conversation that really started last week by Sierra of people need to be playing the game. People aren't playing the game. They're just sitting back, and there's 4 or 5 people that are just controlling things, and they're just being stupid because there's 8 people who aren't in the alliance. There's only 4 or 5 people that are controlling things, and so people are playing the game rather stupidly. And there was some talk about there's this alliance, and whether or not the people on the bottom of that alliance need to be making moves to work with the 3 Amigas.
Right.
Steven said that I believe this season is being played differently than any other season in the history of the show. He said maybe it's not hierarchical. And so, which is a great Stephen Fischbach quote.
Yes, dynamic structures.
Yes, a Fischbach-esque quote from Stephen.
Never forget. Yes.
And so, is that the case? Do you see something different happening here in Survivor 31 that is different than any of the previous 30 iterations of Survivor we have seen?
Not yet. Not yet. I'm still not seeing it. I'm seeing that Steven has been really loyal with Jeremy and Kimmy. Every tribal council he's been to, all 3 of them so far, he's been really holding down the line. I haven't seen him swinging from voting block to voting block. I haven't really seen too many people doing that other than someone like Spencer out of necessity. Spencer doesn't have a block to begin with, and he just needs to stay alive. So I think that we saw a bit of that on Takeo. We didn't see like a traditional alliance emerge from Takeo, but for the most part, the vast majority of the people in this game are original Bion. So we're seeing them now have to play the game, some of them for the first time. I'm not seeing it completely yet. Are you catching his drift at all?
Well, I would say to a degree. I think that there have been situations like this before, and I think just to go back to Survivor Karamoan, because I think that there are some similarities here, and again with these returning players, where in that 3 Amigo Tribal Council, you had the people that were, and maybe it might have been, is it final 9 or final 10?
At the 3 Amigos, I think that Philip goes out at 9, I believe,
okay.
or maybe even 8.
Okay, so anyway, so you have so many different things going on there, but it's like there are the 3 people who are clearly at the bottom.
Right.
But the other part of the alliance doesn't necessarily go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And in the case of this 9-person alliance that we saw that all voted for Kelly Wentworth, I don't think it's a clearly defined 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If you ask Jeremy who's 1, 2, 3, that's probably different than who Steven thinks is 1, 2, 3. What
right.
Andrew thinks is 1, 2, 3. What Tasha thinks is 1, 2, 3. So the problem is that nobody in the 9 believes that they are 7, 8, 9. Maybe Kelly Wigglesworth or somebody like that. But other than that, everybody else, I mean, Spencer's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is going to be different than everybody else's. So everybody is under the assumption that they are probably in that top 3, 4, or 5. And it's not necessarily like a Boston Rob situation or a Kim Spradlin situation where she's going or he's going to every single person in the group. Okay, it's me and you two, it's me and you two, it's me and you two. I think everybody has their own designs on this pecking order because there's so much time left and there's so many people that are still in this group. So it's clearly defined. You 3 are on the bottom, but everything else is a mess. And so everybody else thinks that they're not going out for a little while. That's in that group of 9. I've still got 3 people to get rid of before my name is potentially coming up. So it's not exactly like this is Survivor Marquesas and we're seeing the pecking order very clearly defined and that people who are in 9, 10, 11, 12 or at the bottom of the alliance 6, 7, 8, 9 are going to say, boy, I better get with them or otherwise I'm going to be next. It's very muddy right now.
Right. So what do you think is the impact then of the fact that Sierra outs this 4 or 5 people? She calls it. It's Tasha, Jeremy, Savage, and it's either Joe or Fischbach in that spot. One of those people is gone. Savage is now gone. Savage is now blasted out of the game. That information that's hanging out there in Tribal Council that Sierra calls out, how does that percolate in, I don't know, Keith Nail's head, Spencer's head, Kimmy Kappenberg's head? What is the impact of that line coupled with Savage being removed? Anything?
I don't think there's any impact. I think that everybody already sort of knew what was going on. I think that maybe you have some a little bit more of an inroad for somebody to do something, but I think that, Kimmy's still tight with the people she's still tight with. Keith is still tight with the people he's still tight with. Like, I don't think there was anything that was said there. If anything, I think that potentially you could see Joe be the piece who ends up swinging with the women, sort of like Malcolm back in Survivor Home, being the person who's sort of like on the outs from the returning favorites. If he picks up wind, boy, Andrew was the only person that was protecting me. He's not here. Steven is out to get me. He's clearly with Jeremy and Tasha. So the only people I have who could potentially be with me are Kelly and Sierra, who he was with at that new Takeo alliance, which was ended up formed after the first swap. So if he could go there, and maybe could he pull Keith Nail back over, because Jeremy and Keith Nail aren't always the the tightest people. I don't know if there's any love between Stephen Fischbach and Keith Nail. So if anything, if there's going to be some
Keith Nail, come on.
If there is going to be some sort of like counter resistance to that group that we talked about, the old Bion minus Andrew, I could definitely see Jeremy, who is probably in need of some allies right now, swinging and being that person with the Amigas. And we talked about this on the voicemail show last week of why, if Joe's plan is to win every single immunity, why would he swing and vote with all the alpha males and Tasha who are going to be the people fighting him for those immunities? Why not try to go with Kelly, with Sierra, with Abi-Maria? Because he would have a much better chance to win all the immunities if he was working with that group.
Right. Well, there's no question about the fact that the Meat Shield Alliance lost a big chunk tonight. Savage was certainly a part of that Meat Shield. The question is, like, how big is the hole? Does that destroy the shield? Is the shield going to have to fall apart by necessity now, and someone like Joe is going to break away from that strategy and do exactly what you're saying? Or are they going to say, hold the line, don't break, and they're going to keep trying to drill forward with this strategy that was in place? I think that that's going to be a question that you got to imagine is going to be immediately answered as soon as next week. I don't know. I like what you're saying for Joe. But
I think he needs to pivot.
Yeah, I mean, he had that guarantee from Savage. That must have been so nice for Savage. Like, I will never write your name down. It's always nice to have that. I don't know if you can ever really believe that if you're Joe, but coming from a Savage, I feel like that sounds kind of good. So this is not a great. I don't think that this was great news for Joe tonight. I think that losing Savage here, he's probably
no. He's the biggest loser out of everybody that was still in the game after this happened. Yeah, that was the one person that had his back in this game that wasn't going to turn around and screw him over the first time he lost the challenge, and that person is gone. And I think that Joe probably, even though I argued last week that he shouldn't be winning every challenge, like, Joe should not be losing a challenge at this point in time. Because
nine more to go. He's got this. That's fine.
Yeah, but again, I think that the move for Joe, and I don't know if he'll see it or not, is to start working with the women that he can certainly beat out and stop going head-to-head with the people that are going to be fighting him for those immunities. You're right. Josh, you want to get into some of these questions?
Yeah, let's get into
I'm so fired up tonight. This is.
I know. Well, you've got a lot going on, Rob. You've got a lot going on life-wise right now and Survivor-wise. So
yeah, what a beautiful time to bring a life into this world because everything going on Survivor.
Yeah, this is level 1 Cesterninoing right now.
Yeah. All right, let's start with Kelly Graveline, who says, why do you think the girls chose Savage over Steven or Jeremy? Well, we talked a little bit about Savage versus Steven, but why not Jeremy? Why not put the target on Jeremy?
Well, maybe Wentworth thinks that she's got the San Juan del Sur connection with him, and maybe they can make something work. I think that she knows Jeremy to some extent. She brings that history into the game. Maybe she feels like she can work with him. I think that it's probably more about what they know about Andrew. And what they know about Andrew Savage is he's coming across as a very inflexible player. He has that old school mentality. He wants to stick with his people. Savage and Sierra have a bridge burned between them that is never going to get fixed up. And Sierra and Wentworth and Abby are linked right now. So I think that of that group to take a shot at, who is the least likely to do anything with you in the future? Savage by far. So I think Savage is the way to go. If that's the move, it's got to be Savage, I think.
Yeah. Again, just like how Malcolm and Eddie and Reynolds saw, Phillip is the person who's sort of holding this group together. If we could just take him out, he's the person who's keeping us down. Doesn't necessarily work that way. And, again, totally different that they had 3 idols, and their situation in terms of the idols that they had was much closer to what Mike had to deal with back in Survivor Worlds Apart. But in terms of trying to take out that one person who was sort of blocking everything, the figurehead of that group, I think that was probably, it might have been more damaging to the overall group to take out somebody like Jeremy, who was holding. Like, I think that Savage might have been the obvious target. Maybe Jeremy was the person who ultimately might have had, maybe he was more the glue of this group, keeping things together, holding, because he really was the nucleus of keeping Savage and Steven, and Tasha and a couple of those other people together.
Yeah, I just think that with Savage gone, Jeremy is more willing to entertain ideas of working with the 3 amigos.
Sure. I totally understand why they did what they did, but maybe No,
it's something to entertain for sure. Not for nothing, Savage kind of sounds like a Stealth or Us nickname, right?
Sure.
I will call you the Savage.
What does Raider Man have to say?
Duke Silver says, the greatest single idol play of all time. Huge Hands fan, but that takes the cake for me. Hallelujah, Savage is gone. What do you think? Greatest single idol play of all time from Kelly Wentworth tonight?
It really comes down to a couple different things. I think from a drama perspective, that was really strong. I mean, there's been so many great idol plays in the history of the show. It really comes down to me what we're talking, if we're talking about TV or we're talking about sort of what was going on the island. I get the sense that she must have been tipped off, and if that's the case, then she has an idol. Somebody told her she's being voted out. I don't know how much praise we can, we give her praise for not spilling the beans about having the idol, for being deceptive enough to not let people know she has the idol. But if somebody tells you, hey, you're getting voted off, and she has the idol, then, playing the idol was kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
In terms of TV, though, that was really good. There's probably other moments that are more shocking, just off the top of my head. The 3 Amigos thing, definitely, I think, is probably a more iconic moment. I think that Parvati giving out the 2 idols in Heroes versus Villains, I think that those are probably, the level 1. But this was right there, I think, level 2. And the new highest high and greatest moment of the Kelly Wentworth era.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, that's an easy segue into this next question from Chris Frick. Does this episode redeem Drew Christie in wanting to vote out Wentworth? What do we think? Is the Christie prophecy coming true? Is Kelly Wentworth the most dangerous player out there?
I think finally.
So, basically, I'm a badass.
Yeah, nailed it. He nailed it. Hashtag nailed it.
Yeah. He knew it. I mean, he was right that she is a savvy player, and we'll see ultimately, just how right he was. But I think that we do owe Drew some credit that Kelly is a force to be reckoned with. She is a factor here going forward, and he was the first one to see it. He saw something. He's like a scout.
Yeah, he scattered it out.
Casting.
Yeah, it's good. He figured it out.
Okay. Here's one from Dory who says, who do you think was right at Tribal? I think it was Steven. There are more layers to this game than Sierra sees. I do agree that there were more levels and layers to this than Sierra was seeing. I don't think it was clearly a black and white issue, but I don't believe that there is something going on in this game the likes of which Survivor has never seen. It's just that it's more complicated. Again, are Steven and I saying the same things in slightly different terms? Probably, but
yeah.
I think that Steven is probably more correct about this.
Yeah, I think I wanna be inside of Stephen Fischbach's head right now, and just like in this moment after this tribal council, like those bullets could have gone his way. Like what does this do to him? What does this do to him after this night? I feel he really did dodge some bullets tonight for sure.
He really did. He was like Neo.
Yeah, he really was. Oh my God, Mr. Fischbach.
Neo Fischbach.
Yeah, this is from Ann Curtis. How come we saw little to nothing of Spencer? I mean, what? We've seen a lot of Spencer. We need more.
Yeah, we saw him tonight.
We need more Spencer. We've got a lot of Spencer going on right now.
Yeah, I think we've seen plenty of Spencer. It's okay.
It's all right. I think that Spencer can take. He can have a down week. I think that's fine. This is from Joyful. Did Wentworth follow the 49 laws of Survivor and make a compelling spectacle that will allow her to gain new allies?
Yeah, well, one of the things we talked about in the 49 Laws of Survivor is this idea of create a compelling spectacle. And we talked about this, and I think the example that we cited in the 49 Laws of Survivor, which I recorded with Stephen Fischbach, which you could see in our digital download store, if you click on store on the website, that Stephen, and I talked about how Russell Hantz back in Heroes versus Villains got people on his side after he pulled out that amazing idol play and then played the idol on Parvati and then got Tyson out of the game. People are like, hey, maybe this guy's got something going on. Right. I don't know if any people are going to say, let me work with Kelly because she had an idol. I think that's sort of like the opposite of what Stephen was trying to do by finding the idol earlier in the game, sort of like the Russell Hantz methodology of let me get people to work with me because I have an idol. I have something going on. So I'm not sure necessarily if that Kelly is going to find new allies because of what she did tonight, but I think if she can get another idol in her hands, like if she's that person where all of a sudden it's like, oh, we better not vote for her. It's sort of like the Tony thing with the club where it's like, oh, I don't want to vote for Kelly because who knows if she could pull out another idol.
Right. Well, do you think that this was flashy enough that you just don't know if Wentworth's got another idol in her bag, or was this lacking a little bit of that kind of pizzazz? I mean, no one's a Tony Vlachos. That man is one in a million.
No.
But do you think that this was enough of a spectacle that people are going to be afraid of Wentworth?
Well, the thing is going to be now if the next tribal council, it's like, well, now we know she doesn't have an idol. Now the previews showed that maybe another survivor is able to get their hands on an idol coming up next week in sort of an interesting way, which we will surely get into next episode. But now it's sort of like, well, I bet she doesn't have two idols.
Right. But yeah, I think I don't know. I don't know if it was enough of a spectacle. I don't know if it's enough of a spectacle that people are going to say I got to work for Kelly Wentworth. But it might be the kind of thing that the game is wide open. The game is really alive now in a way where there's fire on the field and we better act accordingly. So I do think that there's going to be some effect. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be to Kelly's advantage specifically, but I could see it. Could certainly see it. This is from Jason Weatherholtz. Sierra says, I've been begging people to make moves. True or false? What she really means is that they won't play her moves. Do you think that there's something to that Sierra is really, digging her heels in and is really more upset about the fact that people aren't playing with her?
Yeah, I've seen that complaint a bit on social media where people are talking about how, Sierra is just sort of stamping her feet because people aren't going along with any of her plans. And I feel like sort of, would you say that Sierra is in Troyzan mode at this point yet?
In Troyzan mode. Oh, well, is this her island? She hasn't gone around stomping around, thumping her chest or anything.
She's Troyzan mode adjacent, I think, at this point. I think that what you really want to do if you're Sierra is that I think you want to sort of try the gentles. And again, it is desperation mode. It is Hail Mary time. But I think that the better play on Survivor is always to sort of like subtly ingratiate yourself back into the fold as a person like, hey, like, my vote is available to you for what you want to do, as opposed to being the person like, hey, come with us, make a move, let's do this, we can do it. I think the sort of like the hard sell is rarely the effective one on Survivor.
But I feel like we're only seeing that from Sierra at tribal councils. I feel like when we're seeing Sierra at the reward or on a walk with Steven in those moments, it seems like, look, Joe, who is unbelievably is in a secure position in this episode up until the end of the tribal council, Joe is willing to entertain conversations with Sierra. That's very different from the Troyzan situation where he's really persona non grata. No one wants to talk to him. No one wants to field anything with Sierra. So I think that Sierra is still being smooth enough that these conversations are existing, and the fact that she has a win tonight, I think that could really reopen the doors. People who may have already been willing to kind of field the phone call, at least let her talk and listen to the content. I feel like the conversations might be able to start up again. So I think Troyzan adjacent is probably the furthest I'd be willing to go with that. Yeah. This is a funny mental image, though. Survivor Wizard says, could the three women have split their vote between Savage, Tasha, and Jeremy, forcing a tie, get the alliance to decide who goes? Well, that would have been flashy.
I think that's getting a little too cute.
A little
I
cute.
mean, if one person ends up going with another person, or if they split the vote in a weird way,
Right.
I think that is really asking people to be omniscient in terms of how the votes are going to go.
And this way, they control who's gone. Like they know. It seems like they know very specifically who they want out of that mix. So I don't know. I don't see the advantage. It would be great for television. That'd be great TV.
Yeah. Josh, let's talk just real quick about Kelly Wigglesworth and getting some redemption tonight, finally, after losing the immunity challenge, which sent Dirk home back in Survivor Borneo. A weight has been lifted.
Oh, my God. She really did suck on that day. Yeah, I guess. Do we really got to talk about it?
I'm just saying we went a long ways to go to sort of like rehash that moment from 15 years ago. Like, I feel like that was a rather obscure thing to bring up here in Survivor 31. Like, hey, remember 30 seasons ago when Kelly lost that challenge for immunity in the 5th episode of the show?
Yeah, I believe what we called that on the Evolution of Strategy is that's like a rental twofer. That's when you're really digging for a joke that you have to stretch pretty far for.
Well, so much Caramoan talk tonight.
I know. God, we should probably stop. People tuned out.
Okay, the great Paul Asleson wants to know.
Yes, awesome.
Did Savage make any strategic errors this season, or was his personality/relationships his downfall? So
yeah,
we discussed tonight whether the error came in A, not pushing hard enough for Steven, B, telling Joe about Steven's plan, like why not sort of keep that under your hat? Did he go to Joe too early? Because I don't know if Savage necessarily sanctioned the conversation that Joe ultimately had with the women. So that ends up being sort of like, once you're not controlling the information, other people are able to disseminate that to the other people, which may have inadvertently led to Sierra and Kelly ultimately knowing about what was going on with this vote tonight. Or was it just a simple matter of Andrew rubbing people the wrong way socially?
Yeah, I think that you just analyze a lot of the tactical errors that were in there. I think that going back to tossing out Sierra's name as a decoy when he was trying to get rid of Spencer, that obviously wasn't great. I think that there's a social component in a very big way to this as well, where some of these people just did not get along with him. They were just not, Abby and Savage seemed to have a pretty decent thing for a while, but Sierra seemed to be really thumbs down on him. I think that certainly played a role. I think that was a big piece of this tonight.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned this at the top of the show, where there was that vote back in Survivor Worlds Apart, where Jen Brown played the idol and then ultimately saved that no-collar alliance for a week. But then the next episode, that was where Haley went out, and then Joe went out, and then Jen ends up going out. Did you think that this was just another example of they, staved off elimination for 1 week, but next week we should expect the votes to come back their way?
Yeah, I mean, I know that we're trying to stay away from the Caramoan thing, but that's similar to what happened to the Three Amigos. That it bought them around, and then Malcolm was gone, and Reynolds was gone shortly thereafter. And I think that this pairs nicely with this next question from your nemesis, Rob. Rob has a nemesis who says it makes great TV, but does this move give Abby, Sierra, or Kelly any real shot of winning this game? And we've seen it in the past where a move like this, in the example you cited, and Caramoan as well, where a move like this is executed and then they're just knocked out in a row. I hope not. That sounds boring. But I could see it. I absolutely could still see it. I could see, Jeremy and Steven and Tasha rallying the forces back together. Although there is this open, it's not quite open yet, but I mean, it's a known thing. Joe knows that Steven has been coming after him, so there's going to be a fracture there still that can still be exploited. So I think that maybe this situation is, the big alliance has bigger cracks, more noticeable cracks that you could chip away at than the other examples, than Stealth R Us or the big blue collar alliance. So we'll see. I could see it being just kind of a pagonging of these three. I hope not, but I also think that there are situations that we're also talking about returning players who hopefully have a little bit more game savvy in them, and they are able to really make something out of this. I hope so.
Yeah.
What's your instinct? What do you think is it going to be?
if we got out the dry erase board right now, you have this alliance of 8, which is sort of like this fractured, sort of muddy alliance of 8, and then you have these 3 amigas who are off to the side. Now, if Joe decided to flip with them, and say even if he brought Keith Nail with him and said, okay, this is the week, we're going to take out Steven. Steven's a real troublemaker. He's gunning for us. I mean, that's still 6-5. So they still would need to pull over another person, and I'm not sure who that other person is that they could take with them. Maybe Kelly Wigglesworth, but there really isn't the connective tissue, I don't think, yet right now between Joe and Kelly Wigglesworth. But Savage was the glue keeping Kelly, so she's sort of like a free electron that's now out there, and maybe she could end up going back and working with the women, and maybe that is the answer of Kelly Wigglesworth goes back with the 3 amigas, maybe plus Joe and Keith, and that could give that side 6.
Oh my God, Kelly Wigglesworth is going to be the fulcrum vote of the next episode? Is that what we're looking at?
I mean, she could be. Who else has the tight relationship with Kelly Wigglesworth? I mean, Spencer really had no love with her. It really depends on how Jeremy and Steven ultimately bonded with her at New Bion, but I think that once she got to the second version of the KO, she really just attached herself to Andrew Savage. She was with she was with the old school people, and then
her people are gone. Her people are gone. She's been floating around for a while, and it will be interesting to see where Wigglesworth lands. Or, I mean, maybe it won't be interesting because it hasn't been.
Maybe Kimmy is the glue. Also, maybe Kimmy is the person that can keep her there. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Right. Couple more questions. Doug wants to know Spencer's answer. Did these folks really think that there were 0 idols in play this season? How honest was that? So Spencer's wondering if there were idols this season. I mean, Spencer hasn't gotten a hint or a whiff of the idol. I think that's a legitimate thing to wonder maybe in a season with all returning players. Maybe they didn't have an idol.
You think so? You think that at this stage, you think that Survivor wouldn't throw any idols into the mix for second chances for a season where there were people who either had idol whiffs or had opportunities to play idols and didn't get to play them? You got to figure they're in the mix somewhere, but they hadn't presented themselves at that point. And I think to Spencer's credit, he does say, or people are sitting on them. People are just playing them real close to the vest. But that must have been a really tense dynamic. Like, where the hell are these things? It was late into the game. We're in the 20s now, and idols hadn't been played yet. So there's probably very, very big topic of conversation out there in Cambodia.
Yeah, it's just an odd thing, though, in a season with 20 people that there were these 2 idols that were found, but neither person said anything about it. Jeff never mentioned anything about an idol. I'm sure it came up in conversation with people. Like, is it possible that there are no idols this season? Yeah. I think that it's not a totally insane thing to think that maybe this is a season that doesn't have any idols, because there's been no mention of it. It's like day 21 or 22, no mention of whoever wins the immunity challenge will get a clue to the idol, or no mention of like back in Cagayan and in Worlds Apart of like, do you want the bag of rice or a clue to an advantage? And so, I mean, since it's not come up at all, I think that's not unreasonable that they could think that.
Yeah, I think that you at least, I mean, you can wonder about that, but you have to assume that they're in play and they've been found.
It would seem unlikely that there wouldn't be in the season.
You have to play like that. Jeff Schwartz says, how do you think Kelly drew all the votes toward herself? It's a great question, Jeff. It's a fantastic question. How did all of those votes go to Wentworth?
I mean, I don't know if she necessarily did anything to draw the votes to her. I think that what you could credit her is that she did a great job of making people think that Terry had the idol at the second version of Bion. Yeah. I think that she threw enough suspicion onto Terry, and it was the kind of thing where she could have then said, yeah, I guess Terry left the game with the idol, and so I guess there's no idol in this thing. Terry had it, and now he's gone.
That's good. Yeah, that'd be great if that's what Kelly did. That's very good.
That was a real jerk move, like Colton, that Terry just left the game with an idol in his pocket.
No, stop it. I mean, that'd be great if that's how she sold it, but who knows? From Rachel Coper, is anyone else disappointed that Steven didn't vote out Savage?
Yeah, is this a vendetta unpaid from Steven Fischbach?
This is for their third season, third time's the charm. Fish versus Savage, the vendetta unfulfilled. But they had been setting this up, and it was a thing from the pregame. It's that great Dalton Ross video of Savage, who do you want to go after first? Fischbach, who do you want to go after first? Savage. And it feels a little unfulfilled. Like, it feels like that story, did it ever go anywhere? Do you feel like there's an ending to that feud?
Well, not really
I guess
yet.
that's life, though, right? That's life. That's life.
That's life. But I mean, in fairness, I mean, did Steven ever have any sort of clue how much Andrew disliked him or wanted to get him out?
I don't know about it out there on the show. I
mean,
don't.
You never heard. I mean, go back to. I mean, Steven's like, boy, there's all these alpha males. I'd like to eventually break this up. But did we ever hear Steven mention Andrew as a potential target at any point in the game?
Not really. I think a lot of it is pre-game. I'm sure it was there, but it obviously wasn't the big focus on the story. But it was certainly on Savage's end. Savage was really personal on the show. It was personal against Fish. Did not like the Fish. Did not care for it.
Okay. One or two. Joyful wants to know, Spencer looked happy when Savage was voted out. Can the three Amigas pull him in? Could Spencer be a free-floating vote that ends up moving over to the old people from, a couple of them from Takeo, in Kelly and Abi-Maria, and then also Sierra, who, going back to the pregame stuff, I believe that there was a lot of talk about Spencer and Sierra as a pregame alliance.
Yeah, I mean, if it made sense and if there were other numbers coming as well, I think that Spencer could do it. I could absolutely see that. Wentworth is somebody that he really loved playing with and wanted to play with. Sierra, another person I think that he wanted to play with. He played with Sierra and Abby on the vote against Wu, so he has history of voting with them. I could see him wanting to work with them. I think it would be a matter of who else can they pull. But that could be a possible path. That could be a path, and especially if Wigglesworth is free roaming. I mean, Wigglesworth and Spencer haven't really voted together very much. They've been at odds with each other. I don't think that it's personal. I think that there could be they've been on a bunch of tribes together. They know each other decently well. Maybe those two could drift over to there. I think that there's possibilities there. I could see Spencer going three Amigas.
Okay, and then let's take one last question here tonight. This is from Nicolette, who says, if Joe wants to win 10 straight immunities, isn't his best move to go with the women and not be a threat to the Super Bros? Yes, I do agree. I think that that Joe needs to be working with the women because that's going to be less competition for him in terms of the immunity threats. Let's do one more question that we talked about that earlier tonight. What does Survivor fan Sean have to say?
Sean says, Fish, Wentworth, Tasha, Spencer, and Sierra are still around and one vote away from half the tribe. Is it time for the RHAP alliance?
I would be strongly suspicious that at any point them said, like, hey, hold on. You guys are all friends of RHAP. Like, why don't we work together? And then maybe we could do like spin off our own podcast maybe together.
Yeah.
I think that the familiarity always helps, and I think that, friendly faces are always something that you want to see, but I'd be surprised if at any point in time in Survivor history, in any season, an RHAP alliance was contemplated.
Right, but you saw it in the episode tonight just how eager Wentworth was at the idea of going after Fish, after going after Steven.
Yeah, she seemed excited about it.
And you could just like feel the flames on the sides of the faces of people like, Kelly, don't do that! Don't you dare! Don't you dare!
Yeah.
So if that had happened tonight, I would have been interested in that reaction. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the RHAP alliance is happening, but it's fun that so many of them are still in the game. It makes this season really enjoyable to watch.
All right, Josh. What do you want to go with the hashtag here?
Oh,
We've got a couple different options.
Yeah. I mean, I like that we're anointing them the three Amigas.
Okay.
I think that's good. I'd like that to be a thing.
All right, let's do that because that has the best chance of catching on, I think.
I think that's good. I like that, and I think that the parallels are strong. I like that. Good work, Rob. That was fun.
Okay, I was going to suggest Toto's Overlord, Overload, and
Overlord. Yeah, that's Keith.
And Neo Fischbach.
Yeah.
And Troyzan adjacent, but we can go with the three Amigas.
Sure. I like Troyzan adjacent too, also.
That should just be in all of our vocabularies moving forward. Okay, this was a really fun show. I'm glad we were able to really dig into this tonight. And then tomorrow is going to be the big day, Andrew Savage exit interview day, coming at you with Josh Wigler, and that is going to be coming to you on Thursday, plus a great interview with Marty Piombo. From Josh, not to mention Josh's own exit interview at parade.com. You could follow Josh and all of this stuff he's doing at Round Howard on Twitter.
Yeah, please hit me up with some suggestions for these guys. It's going to be a busy day tomorrow. I need help.
Yeah.
Any questions that you've got for Savage, hit me up. Anything you've got for Marty, hit me up on Twitter. I will read everything, and I would be very, very, very grateful to get your suggestions for these interviews tomorrow.
Yeah, we're also going to post the question thread for Marty tonight. I know that Josh is planning to talk to Marty earlier in the day tomorrow, so we want to get that question thread up on the Facebook page as well tonight. So that's all coming up. And then, of course, Friday night, it's looking like I am going to be out of the picture also for the Amazing Race. And again, one of the big tragedies of all this tonight, Josh, is that I will not be doing the voicemails this week on a night when Jeff had basically the greatest night perhaps in years of the inappropriate Jeff quotes.
All-timer, honestly. From the moment that the two balls hit the disc in the Joe versus Keith, you can just pull the audio and listen to it, and it is going to be the most inappropriate thing that you will ever hear Jeff Probst say.
Right,
it was phenomenal.
What I will do is I do hope to get I will pull those clips. We will play them down the road. Then we're scheduled next week when we're hopefully back up and running. Bryce Isaiah is going to be joining us for the voicemails, and then we can dig into all of that a bit more on that episode of the podcast. So
beautiful.
Very exciting stuff going on all the ways around. So that's going to do it for us here tonight. Hope to be talking with you guys again soon in a couple of days. Have a great week, everybody. And Josh, good luck with the Andrew Savage.
Hey, Rob, good luck with the whole life thing. And everyone's best to Nicole as well. Best to you and your entire family. This is very exciting times for you, Rob. This is great. Everyone's very happy.
All right. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.